They applauded before I even sat down. Slides glowed with bold numbers. 650 million, stamped with my signature at the bottom. Someone joked about champagne later. I didn't laugh. I had carried this deal across 9 months of stalled calls, hostile lawyers, and a client who trusted exactly one name, mine. Today was supposed to be the victory lap. After the handshakes, the CEO asked me to stay behind. Just a quick follow-up, he said. The door closed on the noise outside, and the room went quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No flowers waited on the table. No thank you email, just the CFO. Already seated. Papers aligned with surgical care. He didn't look at me when he spoke. This is about restructuring. His tone was calm, practiced, almost kind. He slid a document forward. Compensation adjustment, minus 65%. Effective immediately. My title was replaced with something vague and harmless. A support role that answered to the woman who had taken credit during the presentation 5 minutes earlier. I asked if this was a mistake. The CFO smiled the way people do when they believe the decision is irreversible. The CEO nodded once, eyes fixed on the tabletop, as if agreement required no ownership. They talked about alignment, optics, leadership refresh. None of those words explained why the person who closed the largest contract in company history was being quietly dismantled. I had built the entire negotiation framework, every safeguard, every risk buffer, every concession that kept the client at the table lived in my notes. The CFO knew that. He also knew numbers scare boards less than people do, so he chose control. The CEO chose comfort. Anger rose, sharp and useless. I felt it press against my ribs, asking to be heard. I swallowed it. I folded the paper once, neatly, like someone who still respected process. I met the CFO's eyes and smiled. I understand, I said, too calmly, calm enough that his confidence wavered for half a second, enough to remind myself that meetings like this don't end stories, they start them. Instead, if you're listening to this story right now, I hope you can still find a moment of peace for yourself, no matter how busy your day has been, when work weighs heavily on your mind. Sometimes just standing near a window or balcony, looking out for a few minutes and letting the natural light touch your eyes is enough to soothe your mood. Where are you listening from at home? On your way to work? Or on a quiet evening? Stay with me. And if this story resonates with you, subscribing to the channel will help us continue on even deeper journeys, because after that moment, things begin to take unexpected turns. I didn't sleep that night, not from shock, but because my body finally remembered everything it had absorbed to get us there. The overnight flights blurred together red-eye cabins, recycled air, bitter coffee. My laptop balanced on a tray table while turbulence shook clauses loose. I had negotiated across time zones and cultures, argued through translators, and held collapsing deals together with preparation and nerve. More than once, the contract nearly broke in real time. Voices raised, deadlines weaponized, threats dressed as courtesy. Each time, I stayed standing. My health paid quietly. Migraines bloomed behind my eyes and crawled down my spine. Meals disappeared. Doctors warned me to slow down while I nodded and booked another flight. I told myself it was temporary, that once the contract closed, there would be room to breathe. That lie carried me farther than rest ever did. By morning, the building felt altered. Conversations stopped when I approached. Then, Sina Clark appeared, young, polished, perfectly briefed. She carried herself like momentum belonged to her. She was introduced as the future, the fresh face of leadership. She repeated my arguments with cleaner phrasing, accepted praise meant for endurance she'd never paid, and smiled as if inheritance were achievement. She didn't avoid my eyes. She didn't need to. The requests followed quickly. Can you send your notes? Can you walk Sina through the background handover? They called it, as if experience could be transferred in an email. I opened shared documents and watched my name vanish line by line, replaced with hers. Revision history quietly erased, years of strategy reduced to anonymous contribution. When I objected, I was told this was alignment. Be flexible, be supportive. What cut deepest wasn't the theft. It was the silence that endorsed it. No one corrected the record. No one defended the history. The company I had shielded through crises allowed the story to change without resistance. Betrayal doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes with approval. I complied outwardly because refusal would have been dramatic, and drama was what they expected from someone cornered. Instead, I remembered a night overseas, hours before a call that could have killed the deal, when the client's lead leaned in and lowered his voice. "Continuity matters more than price," he said. "What happens if the person steering this disappears?" I had answered carefully then. I wrote even more carefully afterward. Every safeguard they now ignored was placed with intent, not emotion, sitting there, watching my authority dissolve on a shared screen. The pressure in my chest tightened, not with panic, but with clarity. They believed they were erasing me. They didn't realize they were touching something designed to respond. I closed my laptop and nodded through the rest of the meeting. Inside, the sense of betrayal compressed into focus. Silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation, and they were giving me time without understanding its cost. I gathered my files slowly, aware that every polite smile assumed I was finished. What they mistook for compliance was calculation. I was already replaying that private request, aligning patience with leverage, and deciding exactly when memory would turn into action. I let the anger stay contained, because exposure would weaken it, and containment was the only way to turn resentment into something precise and strategically unavoidable later. They wanted control, and that was the first thing I understood once the noise settled. Control over narrative, over credit, over outcomes they hadn't earned. So I did nothing. I showed up, nodded, and watched. Cold decisions require clear air, and silence gave me that. While Sina Clark rehearsed leadership lines upstairs, I sat with the contract I had written and remembered exactly why each sentence existed. The oversight clause wasn't dramatic. It didn't threaten. It simply stated that operational authority remained with a named individual for continuity purposes. Mine. The transfer condition was even quieter. Any reassignment without written approval triggered a review window for the client. No alarms, no fireworks, just structure. I had drafted it after a late conversation where the client's legal lead said, "We've been burned by substitutions." I had replied, "Then let's remove the incentive to try." They agreed. The company skimmed. I didn't act because action would have warned them. Instead, I observed the missteps stack neatly. Sina scheduled calls without context. She promised timelines that contradicted procurement reality. She delegated questions she couldn't answer. The CFO praised her confidence and ignored the gaps. The CEO nodded, relieved to see enthusiasm replace endurance. Meetings multiplied. Clarity didn't. They treated the contract like a trophy instead of a system. Internal decks circulated with renamed sections and simplified charts. Risk buffers vanished to make margins prettier. I watched suppliers receive conflicting instructions. I listened as compliance flagged minor issues that were dismissed as overly cautious. No one looped me in. That was the point. They believed exclusion meant ownership. I kept my calendar open and my mouth closed. When asked, I handed over exactly what was requested. Nothing more. Facts, not interpretation. Process, not judgment. Cold wasn't cruel. It was precise. I let the company teach itself what happens when momentum outruns understanding. The email arrived without drama. No subject line theatrics. Just a header from the client's legal department. Addressed to finance, copied to executive leadership, and accidentally. To me, please confirm current operational authority per Section 4. That was all. One sentence. Perfectly neutral. I didn't reply. Neither did anyone else. At first, hours passed. Then the internal scramble began. Questions ricocheted. Why are they asking, did we notify them? Is this routine? The CFO called an emergency huddle? Sina looked confused. She searched her notes. The answer wasn't there. It never had been. A follow-up email landed before the meeting ended. Absent confirmation. We will pause transition activities pending clarification. Pause was the word lawyers use when they want you to feel the weight without naming consequences. I leaned back and waited. Still no action from me. Timing matters more than intention. By late afternoon, systems reflected uncertainty. Status tags shifted. Approval stalled. No collapse. Just friction. The kind that exposes shortcuts. I watched leaders debate optics while ignoring substance. Someone finally suggested bringing me in. Another voice said it wasn't necessary yet. I smiled at that. The third email came quietly. Addressed properly this time. Please review the attached excerpt regarding reassignment conditions. The excerpt was mine. Unchanged. Unforgiving. My phone stayed face down. I didn't need to intervene. The rules were already in motion. Cold clarity isn't satisfaction. It's alignment. They wanted control. So I let them have it. Exactly as written. When you design systems correctly, you don't have to push. You wait. And eventually, the system speaks for you. I stayed late, not to fix anything, but to observe behavior under pressure. People reveal priorities when timelines compress. They rushed to protect reputations, not outcomes. No one reopened the original assumptions. No one asked why the clause existed. They asked how to neutralize it. That question alone told me everything I needed to know about what came next, and how inevitable it had already become. I remained still, counting breaths, letting consequence travel its full, irreversible distance forward. The next part may change the way you view the whole story. The first crack didn't arrive with noise or panic. It arrived with absence. When my calendar refreshed that morning, a senior review meeting vanished without explanation. No reschedule, no apology. Just a blank space where urgency had lived the night before. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, not because I needed confirmation, but because disappearance is often the first signal of fear. By late morning, the building felt restless. Conversations lowered as I passed. Status dashboards shifted from confident green to cautious yellow, and no one announced why. Across procurement and logistics, the same phrase appeared like a shared hesitation pending compliance. Not failure, not approval, suspension. The kind that freezes momentum without triggering alarms. Yet, the CFO's irritation surfaced next. Sharp and public. His voice carried down the corridor, demanding explanations, demanding speed, demanding names. Why are these approvals stalled? He snapped. Managers answered with half-sentences and deflections. Sina Clark leaned forward, offering reassurance without specifics, promising alignment she couldn't define. The CFO's fingers drummed faster on the table. Control was slipping, and he could feel it. I said nothing. Silence has weight when it's intentional. I sat with my hands folded, posture neutral, eyes forward, listening as confidence drained from the room. No one addressed me directly. That wasn't oversight, that was strategy. They still believed keeping me outside the discussion kept me contained. I let them believe it. The pressure in my chest tightened, steady and contained, like a held breath. The afternoon stretched thin. Emails piled up unanswered. Slack threads grew tense, then abruptly quiet. Someone suggested looping in legal. Someone else said it might escalate unnecessarily. Escalation was already happening. They just hadn't named it. Delays multiplied risk, and I watched people argue over optics while obligations waited patiently. The CFO finally barked, "Fix it." To no one in particular. No one moved. My phone vibrated once against the desk. Then again, I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew what question was forming on the other side. Authority, oversight, continuity. All the things they had waved past when celebration felt safer than scrutiny. Ignorance, I thought. always compounds faster than interest. Mid-afternoon. The temperature in the room changed. Not figuratively, literally. Someone adjusted the thermostat, and the air grew colder. That was when the first formal message arrived. No dramatics, no accusations, just a clean email from the client's legal department, addressed to finance, copied to executive leadership, and unintentionally. To me, please provide clarification regarding current operational authority as referenced in the agreement. That was it. One sentence. Perfectly neutral. Perfectly precise. Conversation stopped. Screens refreshed. The CFO read it twice, his jaw tightening. Sina scrolled frantically through her files. The CEO leaned back, suddenly quiet. No one responded immediately. Silence spread. Heavier now, less controlled. I stayed still. Timing mattered. Acting too soon would dilute impact. Letting the moment breathe would teach them more than explanation ever could. Minutes passed. Then whispers. What does this mean? Did we notify them? Is this standard? No one asked me. Not yet. A second email followed before the hour ended. Courteous but firmer. Absent confirmation. Transition activities will remain paused pending review. Paused. Lawyers use that word carefully. It sounds temporary while carrying permanent consequences. Systems reflected it almost immediately. Status tags shifted again. Approval stalled deeper. Friction replaced flow. I felt the crack widen, not explosively, but inevitably. This wasn't chaos. It was consequence moving at its natural pace. They still believed silence protected them. I knew better. Silence had already delivered the message. They just hadn't finished reading it. Public confidence arrived right on schedule. By morning, the company's press release was everywhere, polished and optimistic, filled with words like momentum, stability, and exciting next phase. Quotes were attributed to the CEO, praising teamwork and visionary leadership. Sana Clark's name appeared twice, framed as proof of renewal. Mine appeared nowhere. I read it once, then again, and felt something close to amusement settle in my chest. The story they were telling the world had already drifted far from reality. Inside the building, optimism evaporated quickly. Finance dashboards refreshed without resolving. Forecasts froze mid-calculation. Cash flow projections stalled because expected advances never cleared. Someone whispered that Treasury couldn't release funds without compliance confirmation. Another whispered back that confirmation was still pending. Pending had become the most expensive word in the company. Procurement felt it next. Suppliers who had been preparing aggressively just days earlier slowed their responses, then stopped altogether. Calls went unanswered. Emails received polite acknowledgments with no commitments. I overheard one vendor say, "We're pausing until authority is clarified." The phrase echoed, migrating from legal language into everyday conversation. Pausing costs nothing to the person who pauses. It costs everything to the one who depends on momentum. The CFO tried to project calm. He scheduled briefings, canceled them, rescheduled again. His messages grew shorter, his patience thinner. We're aligned. He told a room that wasn't. This is procedural. No one asked procedural for whom. Sina continued smiling, repeating lines from the press release like they were armor. Confidence is easiest when you don't understand what's breaking underneath. I watched quietly, taking no notes, offering no corrections. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing certainty unravel without intervention. Not joy. Satisfaction. The kind that comes from watching physics behave exactly as predicted. They had chosen speed over structure, optics over substance. Now the bill was circulating internally. Unanswered. Accruing attention. By afternoon, finance requested emergency clarification from legal. Legal requested time. Time requested silence. Silence produced anxiety. I could feel it humming through the floors, vibrating beneath conversations, tightening voices. Someone joked nervously that the press release might have been premature. No one laughed. Then the external questions started. A trade reporter emailed investor relations asking about the delay in supplier mobilization. Another asked why compliance filings showed conditional status on a finalized contract. A third asked whether the named oversight in the agreement had changed. Each question was reasonable. Together, they were lethal, the CFO snapped. Who's talking to the press as if exposure were betrayal rather than consequence? The CEO suggested holding statements. Sina looked uncertain for the first time. Scanning her phone. Refreshing feeds she couldn't control. I remained still, watching the narrative strain under its own weight. By early evening, internal confidence and external curiosity collided. The same executives who had approved the press release now debated retracting language. It's too late, someone said. They were right. Confidence, once declared, must be defended. Panic, once internalized, cannot be hidden.